Hey, what's going on, gang? Nate on the Stone here. Welcome back to my channel. Because of the riots in Minneapolis and LA and Atlanta and Houston, Dallas, Austin, New York, Philadelphia, Portland, Boston, DC, Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City? Who the hell riots in Salt Lake City? It's like one of the friendliest places in the country. What the hell, people? You know, the one where banks, businesses, and even affordable housing complexes are being looted and or burned to the ground, all presumably because of the unjust death of George Floyd by 4 members of the Minneapolis Police Department. Another incident has been almost completely forgotten. And that's right, I am referring to the Central Park Karen herself, Amy Cooper. In case you've forgotten, Amy Cooper was in a specific part of Central Park called the Ramble with her dog, Henry. Henry did not have a leash, which is against park rules. Now enter in avid bird watcher, Christian Cooper. No relation.
I'm Agent Johnson. This is Special Agent Johnson.
Oh, how you doing?
No relation.
Who proceeded to remind Amy that Henry needed to be on a leash. She refused, and to make a very long story short, their confrontation ended with Amy getting out her cell phone and calling the police on Christian, wherein she said several times that an African-American man was threatening her. Just another case of those crazy New Yorkers being themselves, am I right? But since we live in the year 2020, Amy's call to the police was videotaped by Christian, whose sister then uploaded it onto Facebook, from which it jumped to every other social media platform, with the result that Amy's life was completely destroyed. First, she was labeled the pure incarnation of a Karen. That's modern slang for a white, self-entitled bee. And since this is the digital age where nothing is ever forgotten or forgiven, she's never going to be able to escape from that title. Because the video that Christian Cooper took of Amy made it seem that she was choking Henry, the dog shelter, from which she had originally adopted Henry, demanded that she return him back, which she did, so she lost her dog. The company that she worked for, Franklin Templeton, fired her as one of their investment managers. The NYPD was considering opening up an investigation against her, something which his lordship Mayor Bill de Blasio put his full weight behind, and even worse than that, the New York City Human Rights Commission already opened up an investigation against her. All of this has happened even though Amy Cooper apologized profusely for what she did. Christian Cooper has taken to social media to say maybe, just maybe, things have been taken a little bit too far, and most importantly, we have found out that the whole story that we were given was not exactly the whole story. In a Facebook post, Christian Cooper actually shared some of the comments that he made towards Amy Cooper before he started his video, and those comments kind of changed the picture. Me. Ma'am, dogs in the Ramble have to be on the leash at all times. The sign is right there. Her. The dog runs are closed. He needs his exercise. Me. All you have to do is take him to the other side of the drive outside the Ramble and you can let him run off leash all you want. Her. It's too dangerous. Me. Look, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, but you're not going to like it. Her. What's that? Me to the dog. Come here, puppy. Her. He won't come to you. Me. We'll see about that. I pull out the dog treats I carry for such intransigence. I didn't even get a chance to toss any treats to the pooch before Karen scrambled to grab the dog. Her. Don't you touch my dog! That's when I started video recording with my iPhone and when her inner Karen fully emerged and took a dark turn. Maybe still not justification for calling the boys in blue, granted, but that decision makes a lot more sense now, doesn't it? Now, why am I spending time talking about Amy Cooper when there are cities across the plains literally burning? The answer is because Amy Cooper is a microcosm of the riots. Amy Cooper's life was destroyed because at root she was accused not of being a jerk, not of being overreactive, not of making a bad call or a mistake, but because she was accused of being racist. And the proof of that lay in the fact that she said multiple times to the police dispatch that an African-American man was threatening her. Now, if you're sitting there scratching your head and thinking, that doesn't sound like hard evidence that she's a racist, congratulations, you have common sense. The reason why she was accused of racism is because racism no longer means what it used to mean. And for that, we can thank two guys especially, Stokely Carmichael and Charles Hamilton. Little known historical fact, in the 1960s, not only were race relations between whites and blacks actually improving, but attitudes towards African Americans were improving as well. To give just one example, immediately after World War II, less than half of Americans said that there should be equal opportunity for jobs between the races. But in 1972, less than 30 years later, 97% of Americans said, of course there should be equal opportunity. But that is not the image that you would have gotten reading Stokely Carmichael and Charles Hamilton's book Black Power in 1967, the year that it was published, in which they said that the situation of African Americans was post-colonial, the same as it was in Asia and in Africa at the same time. In other words, black Americans had never been more oppressed than right now in 1967. The incongruency between the facts on the ground and the claims that Carmichael and Hamilton made in their book is explained by the fact that they created an entirely new idea of racism, the idea of institutional racism. In this understanding, it didn't matter that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 had been passed. It didn't matter that the war on poverty had been initiated and was now funneling huge amounts of money to solve urban problems. And it didn't matter that attitudes towards black Americans was radically improving. None of it mattered because the system of the US and of the Western world in general was inherently racist. And as long as that system was allowed to continue, the US and the West would continue to oppress both blacks and other minorities. And this is the idea of racism that has been passed down to us. Simple Google searches will show you everything that you need to know. Just for example, take a look at some of these recent headlines. And this is the idea of racism that has been passed down to us. Simple Google searches will show you everything that you need to know. For example, just take a look at some of these recent headlines. CNN, why black Americans are at higher risk for coronavirus. Slate, why the coronavirus is hitting black Americans hardest. Huffington Post, 18 examples of racism in the criminal legal system, which includes things like black Americans serving longer sentences than white Americans, black youths being twice as likely to be arrested as their white counterparts. New York Times, huge racial disparities found in deaths linked to pregnancy. NBC, the US finally has better maternal mortality data. Black mothers still fare the worst. And my personal favorite from the good old, reliable, dependable New York Times, jogging has always excluded black people. And if you're sitting at home thinking, well, none of those things really apply to me, oh brother, are you in for a shock? Because that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, individualism, objectivity, fear of conflict, even the understanding and conception of time itself are all taken to be examples of white privilege and white supremacy. Needless to say, it's all bogus. Take the coronavirus as just one example. We know that the virus is deadlier for older people and or for people who have pre-existing conditions. But 40% of black mothers abort their babies. And more than that, the fertility rate for black mothers per 2018 stood at 1.792. It takes a fertility rate of 2.1 just to keep population levels stable. Translation, there is going to be a higher concentration of elderly people in the black American community for the simple fact that babies aren't being born. On top of that, black Americans are more likely to suffer from things like heart conditions, asthma, cancer, and obesity. Think about this. 4 out of 5 black American women are obese. That's the highest demographic rate of any in the country. The result is that systematic racism doesn't seem like the simple solution ideologues are looking for to explain why the coronavirus is killing off more black Americans. Or take the incarceration rate. One reason why black criminals are sentenced longer than white criminals and why young black men are arrested more is because they disproportionately commit more crime. Jason Riley, writing in the Washington Times in 2014, said, quote, "Today, blacks are about 13% of the population and continue to be responsible for an inordinate amount of crime. between 1976 and 2005, blacks committed more than half of all murders in the United States. The black arrest rate for most offenses, including robbery, aggravated assault, and property crimes, is still typically 2 to 3 times their representation in the population. Blacks as a group are also overrepresented among persons arrested for so-called white-collar crimes, such as counterfeiting, fraud, and embezzlement. And individualism and objectivity are just good things for everyone, regardless of your skin color. Slavery was abolished because people recognized the objective truth that it's morally reprehensible, and emancipation meant that black individuals could actually now become individuals. But our elites and social betters, they don't pay attention to little inconvenient things like the truth, even though that would allow them to find real solutions to real problems. No, instead they simply repeat fantasies like institutional racism, and all the rest of us are required to swallow it. CNN, for example, on May 30th, released a guide on how to be a good white ally for minority people, which included advice like this. Influence your group. Talk to people you know, especially people who share your identity, and hold them responsible for their words, actions, and the part they play in systems of oppression. Acknowledge your privilege. Recognize the benefits and power you have because of the identity you were born with. Even though we're told that assigning a gender or an identity to someone when they're born is evil and oppressive, but never mind that now. Pay attention. Assume, as Paul Keevil says, that racism is all around you and influences everything you say, think, and do. But it's a trap! As sociologist James Lindsay has pointed out, the entire idea of allyship is a ball of contradictions. You are supposed to speak up for minority communities. At the same time, you're supposed to shut up because talking too much will steal the limelight from them, focus it on you, and just be proof that you have a white savior complex. You're supposed to learn everything you can about your own white privilege and how you have contributed to oppression. But at the same time, you can never actually ask a member of a minority community to educate you out of your ignorance, because that's just another sign of white privilege. And there's also the little inconvenient fact that you can never ever, in 100 million years, be a good white ally to minority communities, because there is no such thing as a good white identity. As long as you are white, you will be in some sense the enemy. This idea actually goes, again, all the way back to Stokely Carmichael and Charles Hamilton, who wrote in their book Black Power, quote, "No matter how liberal a white person might be, he cannot ultimately escape the overpowering influence on himself and on black people of his whiteness in a racist society." Institutional racism, intersectionality, identity politics, these and all the other fads and fancies of the left today make up and build a casino where all the games are rigged against you before you even walk through the door. But this also leads us to a very important illumination. If you are a white individual, you can't stop being racist. And the US can't stop being racist. And in light of that, why should people try to convince you to stop being racist or try to even reform the system? It's not going to work by their own logic. The only thing that they can do is completely tear the system down. That's why Amy Cooper's life was destroyed, and that's why these riots are still going. Just take a look at some of the places that have been targeted by some of these mobs, and it becomes really clear that the end goal is the complete and utter destruction, the burning down of the system. The symbolism is really important here, gang. The White House, symbol of US politics, government, and self-rule. Police precincts, order, justice, the rule of law. College Football Hall of Fame, entertainment, and more importantly, the idea that we Americans can actually come together regardless of race in a common love for an activity. CNN HQ, the idea, dying as it is, of objective journalism. Remember what I said about objectivity being a sign of white supremacy. The World War II Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, our history, and the idea of who we are as a people and as a nation. St. Patrick's Cathedral and St. James Cathedral, religion and Christianity specifically, which in and of itself incorporates the idea of logos and the synthesis of reason and faith. These ideas, the rule of law, self-government, equality before the law, ordered liberty, The synthesis of reason and faith, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, due process, innocent until proven guilty, tradition, all of these and others are the blocks that built up Western civilization. And this, at root, is what these rioters and these mobs want to destroy. And that's why they have to be opposed no matter what. Look, I get it. Western civilization isn't perfect. Nothing in this world is. And the mistakes and the evils that Western civilization has committed throughout its history, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of nationality, should be studied in history. They should be remembered, not just for the mere sake of remembering, but so that we can actually learn from them, so that we don't make those same mistakes again. But it is still the best civilization that has come into the world. It's the civilization that allowed freedom to flourish, for human dignity to be recognized, and it's the first one that actually abolished slavery. It's what has allowed us to have technological marvels, everything from the arch in the Gothic cathedral to the iPhone. It's what has allowed us to have beautiful things from symphony orchestras to jazz concerts, the opera to DJs. It's the civilization that recognized the synthesis between reason and faith, which allowed the West to have an explosion in science, poetry, literature, and art. And it's the civilization that recognized good and true things in other civilizations and then brought those things into itself. Tear down Western civilization and you erase all those other things. Fruit can't still be produced when the tree has been cut down, after all. And everyone will suffer because of it. White, black, red, you name it. Ask yourself this: where else but in the West could a black man born into squalid poverty during Jim Crow rise to become a Supreme Court Justice of the United States? Where else but in the West could a common secretary named Betty Graham become a millionaire because she invented something called liquid paper, what we know today as whiteout, which allowed secretaries like her to quickly correct typing mistakes? And in what other civilization can an individual find himself unbound by a strict idea of caste or place in society and rise to wherever he wants to go? Western civilization, it's a lot like silver. It needs care and attention, yes, but it is intrinsically valuable even when it's tarnished. And that's why, FYI, I'm going to keep defending it. But as always, what say you? Are these riots fundamentally about burning down Western civilization? And would that be a bad thing? As always, let me know your thoughts, ideas, and comments in the towel box below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. Before you go, if you could like the video, share it with your friends on social media, I'd be very much obliged. And if you like videos about the culture, politics, and religion, but from a unique POV, then subscribe to the channel and ring the bell for notifications. As always, thank you for watching, for giving me a bit of your day. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you all. I will see you next time, gang, here on the Stone. And in the meantime, remember to dare, read, think, and write. Take care, everyone. Ciao.